Good afternoon, everyone. As you probably will be aware, I am greatly humbled by the very generous introduction of a very great American ambassador, Ambassador Lenny Kounalakis, Your Excellency. Thank you for your kind remarks. Thank you for your patriotic duty serving the American people in friendship with the people of Hungary. The ambassador is really known around the world, establishing chairs for human rights, etc., across the United States, in our home state of California, in our hometown of San Francisco, for her efforts to promote interfaith dialogue of all kinds, political, interfaith, invest in the arts, encourage a discourse on democracy and global affairs. And I might add that she has been a leader in the empowerment of women, and we all take pride in her great achievements, and I'll say more about them in a moment. Thank you very much, Madam Ambassador. After all that has been said, I just want to place this in time and say that on behalf of our entire delegation, how pleased we are to be in Hungary at this important time and why we are here at this important time. I want to introduce them. I'll do it by seniority. Congresswoman Anna Eshoo represents the Silicon Valley in the Congress of the United States, and she is a friend, well, as Californians we all know, the ambassador's record. Anna, would you please stand so everyone can see you? Congresswoman Carolyn Maloney of New York State. Congresswoman Jean Schmidt of Ohio, who is with us. And because we are representatives in Congress, we're always on call. Another member who has to address some concerns in her district, so she may be joining us momentarily, Congresswoman Terry Sewell, first African-American woman elected from the state of Alabama, a freshman member. So we have the experience and we have the new on this visit, on the many meetings that we've had today. This is very, I mean, we talk about titles and power and influence and accomplishments and legislation and the rest, but I view this as a very personal experience coming to Hungary at this time. When we went to the embassy this morning, we went into the ambassador's office, and there was a picture of Cardinal Mindszenty. There he was. It really struck us, those of us who are Catholic and of a certain age, because in the 50s, as young people, Cardinal Mindszenty's plight was what we prayed for about every day. Congresswoman Eshoo knows of that devotion. Congressman Schmidt is probably, Woman Schmidt is probably too young, but she knows, being a daily communicant, associates what her parents experienced in this regard. But Cardinal Mindszenty, as you all know, was a great patriotic hero here. In the United States, he was someone, we prayed every day in Catholic school for the conversion of Russia, as we called it then, the conversion of Russia, and the personification of that oppressive Russian Soviet influence was Cardinal Mindszenty. And it's particularly moving to see his picture this morning because yesterday was Mother's Day in America. What's the connection? The connection, Madam Ambassador, is that when I was young, my mother was devoted, we, as I said, prayed at home and in school and in church for the Cardinal. And she read his book and she followed his proceedings of it all the time and was inspired by him to write a poem to her own mother. And at the end of the poem, it says, inspired by the writings of Cardinal Mindszenty. And what he said, and that is apropos of Mother's Day, is that he said, who can fathom, he said, first he said, mother, she addressed his mother, I think of you, I dream of you. Who can fathom the true meaning of the word mother? Even when it is said by an old man, it sounds like it's coming from the lips of a child. So beautiful. Now, faith-based, yes, not strictly religious, though, in terms of that term, but an inspiration. to us all. To see his picture, much more robust than we remembered him in the U.S., very gaunt, in your office was quite a thrill. But I mention it to you now is to say that that's probably the first many of us in America ever learned of Hungary and the plight of the Hungarian people, and then, of course, 1956, which followed very soon after that. Then the world knew about the freedom fighters and the struggle that was here. That's why I'm glad to be here. I want to thank Maria Schmidt and her leadership as director of the Terror Háza Museum, so that we never forget. I want to thank Rita Ishak and your leadership as president of the Tom Lantos Institute. He always made sure we never forgot, and we're so honored that Katrina Lantos Sweat is here with us today for her leadership in so many respects, and more on Tom in a moment. But getting back to American ambassadors in Hungary, Ambassador Kounalakis is one of a long line of proud American representatives here in Budapest. The first U.S. ambassador, as we observed the 90-year friendship, was Theodore Bretano, and he said in 1922, as he prepared to set sail from New York for Hungary, he said, "I will take to the Hungarian people this message, that America is their friend, that it is our desire to renew and strengthen that friendship between us that has lasted since our own independence was achieved." So as we observe 90 years, we recognize it's a longer relationship, and of course the last 20-some years have been very transformative. Over the on the 90th anniversary of diplomatic relations between our two nations, we celebrate that friendship, which is based on shared values. I'll always remember my first trip to Hungary as a member of Congress. It was in 1988. The Iron Curtain was still down, and we came as part of a NATO, North Atlantic Assembly's interparliamentary group. Katrina is very familiar with that. We came here, we met with Prime Minister Kilroy Groth. He was the Prime Minister at the time. We met with him. And what was very remarkable about the visit to me was that on one of the evenings we were here, the then Ambassador Mark Palmer invited dissidents to come to the residence to meet with this. It was a large congressional delegation. I thought it was remarkable that he invited them. I thought it was courageous that they came. Some of you, I don't know that any, you maybe read about it in history books because you all look so young, but at that time, one of the big issues that they talked about was not only the aspirations for freedom and the rest, but that the recent demonstrations had been about the Danube, about damming the Danube. And while thousands of people might turn out for a demonstration on one expression of freedom or another, the damming of the Danube was sort of catalytic. It brought so many more people and was a step. Anyway, that's the impression we had that evening. It was, I thought, a reflection of the policy of our administration under the leadership of President George Herbert Walker Bush, the first President Bush at the time, that our ambassador could go forward in that way. Little did we know, that was 1988, little did we in the congressional delegation know that in just a few short years, under the leadership of Tom Lantos, we would be advocating for the membership of Hungary in NATO when we were there on that NATO trip. And I was honored to be in Paris with President Clinton when the expansion of NATO was not announced, it was celebrated and the rest. So it all seemed to have gone very fast, but we know that there was a very long history leading up to that, and for the bulk of the time in our 90-year diplomatic relations, there was plenty of hardship in Hungary. In recent days, that friendship, we've worked together for our common goals and transition in Libya, the stability in the Balkans. Hungarian forces serve alongside U.S. forces in Afghanistan now, and Congresswoman Schmidt would want me to say, with a close relationship to the Iowa National Guard particularly. And you know that over 2 million, more like 2.5 million Americans are proud of their Hungarian heritage and serve as bridges between our two countries. As you know, you may not know, but in the capital of the United States, every day, most of us pass by a statue, and we honor Hungary by having the statue of great Hungarian freedom fighter, father of your democracy, some say, Kossuth. I've been calling him Kossuth through grade school and high school and for many years, and now I know it's Kossuth. You know his historic story, leading the Hungarian people in a revolt against foreign rule with this brave freedom fighters 164 years ago. The seeds for Hungarian democracy were formed. Ultimately, you know, the movement for freedom was brutally crushed, and he came to the United States. He was taken as a political prisoner until the Congress of the United States intervened and brought him to America. When he came to New York, notice I'm avoiding saying his name. When Kossuth arrived in New York, he was greeted as a revolutionary with a 31-gun salute. That was the number of states we had at the time, one for each of the states. He addressed a large crowd that welcomed him with the English he had learned from studying Shakespeare and the Bible while he was in jail. It was on that day that the mayor of New York referred to Kossuth as the enlightened representative of Hungarian independence, the champion of human progress, and of universal freedom. I mention all of this just to say that the connection between our two countries has many manifestations, all of them strong and inspirational. And that takes me to my colleague, Congressman Tom Lantos, Chairman Lantos. It was a joy to me when I was Speaker that he would be, when in the majority, he would be the Chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee, and I think Katrina will attest that that was a triumph for him. Like Kossuth, he dedicated his life to the cause of freedom. As a teenager, you know his story. He escaped Nazis and joined the resistance as Hitler's army occupied Budapest. Tom liked to say he was Hungarian by birth and American by choice, and he was equally proud of both countries. As the only Holocaust survivor, as Rita mentioned, elected to the U.S. Congress, he used his experience to empower the powerless and give voice to the voiceless. One of the first days I arrived in Congress, he said, "You have to come to a meeting," and it was with the Dalai Lama. So right from the start, identifying with the aspirations of the people of Tibet when His Holiness was putting forth his plan for autonomy. Whether it was subsequent to that Aung San Suu Kyi, there was no cause, whether it was as chairman of the committee, passing the resolution in the committee condemning the Armenian genocide that had not been done before. These were not always popular issues. Business had its influence, other shall we say, equities weighed in, but Tom was always constant, whether it was Soviet Jewry, you name it. You could walk the globe, and in his imprint was felt. And it was really important to him because what he saw as a young person and saying never forget just didn't mean never forget that, but making sure that it didn't happen again and to stop it in its tracks wherever he saw behavior that did not respect the dignity and worth of every person. And that's why one of the reasons he established the Human Rights Caucus, and that is why it is named for him today. Tom lost his family, and so did Annette, his wife. They were a team, Annette and Tom. They lost their families in the Holocaust. But Katrina and her sister, Annette, named for her mom, Tom used to brag to us and say, "We lost our families in the Holocaust, but our two daughters, they gave us a family." So he was blessed with, what, how many grandchildren? 17 grandchildren. 17 grandchildren, I have two daughters, and how many grades now?
Oh, goodness.
Too many numerous to count. May your tribe increase. And he bragged about them all the time, and his work, well, his family was everything to him, as you can imagine. And it's such a joy to see his family continue his work in the Tom Lantos Institute here in Budapest. And again, Rita, thank you for your leadership as president of the Institute and your beautiful words about Katrina and the family. And again, Maria taking us on the tour here, just a remarkable achievement to bring together the physical, tangible manifestations of when the Nazis occupied this very building as their headquarters, and then that be followed for a period of time by the Soviets, aptly named Terror Háza Museum. But thank you for helping us again, never forget. I mentioned that Tom worked around the world for freedom and self-determination. He was particularly proud when those rights were finally won by the Hungarian people 22 years ago. In the democracy, the people decide. The current Hungarian government was elected by a strong majority of the Hungarian people in a free and fair election. But I join a long list of friends of Hungary, including Secretary Clinton and Ambassador Kounalakis, in expressing concern about recent changes in Hungary's system of checks and balances and their impact on democratic institutions. These concerns have been raised by other friends of Hungary in the EU and the Council of Europe. Today, I had the privilege of meeting with Prime Minister Orban, and our delegation did, and we expressed some of these concerns as we understood them, viewing it from the United States, and I understand that some progress has been made in addressing a number of these concerns, whether it's the conversations with the Venice Commission or suggestions being made by the Minister of Justice and the rest. I'm hopeful that progress will be made, and I'm encouraged by recent comments by Deputy Assistant Secretary Thomas Malia from the State Department's Bureau of Democracy, Human Rights, and Labor. He was in Budapest last week, perhaps you observed that, and said that since the Venice Commission and some EU commissioners have spoken up, the Hungarian government has been engaged in the process of revisiting some of these new laws. It is encouraging to see that Hungary is taking another look at some of these reforms. And I think we were encouraged by our conversations with the Speaker today, as well as with the Prime Minister. I began my remarks by quoting the first ambassador to Hungary as he said about the newly formed relationship between Hungary and the United States. He said, "Our friendship will serve to bring about an international prosperity and through which we alone can come to real peace and real happiness in the world." I'll close by commending our current ambassador for continuing to strengthen the U.S.-Hungarian relationship. Under her leadership, may our friendship continue for at least another 90 years and more, and I'd like to call her up here to the podium because earlier today when we met with the Speaker of the House, I was proud to convey to him the original treaty that was signed by Warren Harding. Congresswoman Schmidt will click to add that he was from Ohio, and this is a copy of the treaty that was signed for the starting diplomatic relations between the United States and Hungary. You can imagine all the technical language, but it is said, "This treaty between the United States and Hungary signed at Budapest, August 29, 1921, to establish securely friendly relations between the two nations, subject to the understanding which is hereby made a part of," it goes on and on like that, but it salutes the friendship that would be formalized 90 years ago, and I want her to have a copy of, I attribute my staff for doing such wonderful research to come up with a copy of this treaty, and because of her leadership, the pride we take in her, the dignity, intellect, and patriotism and love of Hungary that she brings, and America, that she brings to the task, I want to express our appreciation for her service, her leadership, her excellency, Ambassador Kounalakis. So thank you all very much for being here today. As you can see, the connection between the United States, the American people, and the Hungarian people is one that is personal, that is official. It is one that we hope will be prosperous, continue in good spirits for a long time to come. And I'm very honored as the leader of the House Democrats, but I'm sure Congresswoman Schmidt will afford me the liberty of saying to bring greetings to all of you from the Congress of the United States. Congratulations to both of our country on 90 years of friendship. Thank you all very much.